We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest this morning is Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney here in town. I had a mental block there for a second. I have a lot of lawyers come on the show. So. Clint Kelly is a malpractice attorney in town, taking your calls at 737-7587. We lost Robbie in a moment ago. He was waiting. If you call back, we'll get you on. But let's go to Donna. Donna, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Donna. How can we help you?
Yes, my son had a massive heart attack back in March of this year.
Okay.
During the arteriogram, the anesthesiologist punctured an artery, and he bled out. And, of course, things went downhill from there. And he wound up 82 days in hospital. Right now, he is on an LVAD, and hopefully he'll be going on the heart transplant list. Is there anything that we can do to toward a lawsuit on this?
How old is your son?
He was 51 when it happened. He's 52 now.
What was he in the hospital for, Donna?
Well, he had a heart attack. Okay,
originally had a heart attack, and then in the course of the treatment, there was an artery that was punctured?
Yes.
And as a result of that, you said he was in the hospital for 82 days. What were they treating him for?
For the results of the heart attack.
All right.
And the artery that bled out. Of course, that led from one thing to another, and it just caused a lot of complications for him.
And he's on a heart transplant list right now?
He will be going, hopefully, in October.
All right. Well, Donna, why don't you call my office so that I can get some information from you. And when you call in, it's 615-824-3703. And when you call and ask to speak to my nurse, Kathy Farrell, and they'll transfer you over to Kathy, and she'll get some information from you. And when I've had a chance to review it, I'll let you know whether I think it's a case.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
Listen, and if you missed that number, again, give it out for again, and Donna and anyone else listening, we'll put it up on the screen as well at the end of the program. But was it 3703?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. So 824-3703, and Donna, his office is there in Hendersonville. So if you would, I mean, people heard that, and good for Donna making the call. She said it happened in March, so it's within the statute of limitations. What are the questions you need to ask to see if there's something maybe here you could act on?
Well, the first thing I'd want to know is he's in there for a heart attack. What would be the likely prognosis if it had been treated properly? That's the first thing you got to ask yourself is if this puncturing hadn't happened, what would be the likely outcome? The second thing you have to ask is why was it punctured? And is this a risk of the procedure? Probably is, but that doesn't mean that the doctor gets a pass. It may well be that this was a bad one. Maybe the doctor wasn't paying attention. It's just it's too early to tell from my standpoint. But
then not only after the puncture, and those are, I understand those, would you also then ask, okay, once you discovered the puncture, was the proper care delivered to keep him from bleeding out?
That's correct.
Because that's the one that hits me more. I agree with you. You're like, all right, in this kind of procedure, is there a possibility sometimes with something very delicate you might nick something? And if it does, it's not good, but maybe it just is that high risk. Then, though, the question is, why the heck did he bleed out? Because you should see that. Now, did they miss that he nicked it, and then all of a sudden the poor guy's got an abdomen full of blood?
Well, that's just it. It depends on what they nicked, and you're right, how much blood did get in there before it was recognized. I mean, you start bleeding internally significantly, you've got a problem. And you can wind up in the hospital a long time if you're not dead. So there's a lot of questions that have to be asked about this before I could tell you whether or not she's got a case or he has a case.
But it's enough, I mean, that you would look into this one clearly.
Absolutely.
How hard is it going to be to get the medical records? This happened in March. I mean, I'm a journalist, so I'm always skeptical, thinking to myself, all right, well, maybe they knew there was a mess up, so someone's cooked the books over there. I mean, I've mentioned that to you before, and you say usually there's some good people in there that are going to make sure the truth comes out, but how do you go about getting this stuff?
Well, first of all, you make a request to the hospital to get the records, and a lot of times the records will be put organized in a way that we can make a fairly quick decision. If it's something that we need to dig in deeper, we can get the nurse's notes and some additional lab records. But this is something I think that's fairly straightforward. Really what you're looking at is, it sounds like there was some type of operative procedure to try to deal with the heart attack or the consequences of it. And as you said, there was a bad outcome. Question is, was this bad outcome preventable? And the only way to really know that is to have those records evaluated. But the first thing I got to find out is what really happened and what was this person's background before he had the heart attack. Was he set up for something like this?
Do you ever look into the background of the doctor involved?
I do, particularly if I have some suspicion that the doctor has some chemical dependency issues or alcohol issues, and that has happened. You were asking earlier in the show, have any of these cases been criminal or could have been criminal? I've had a couple of cases that involved impaired physicians, and those definitely could have been criminal cases if we hadn't resolved it.
Is that charge SUI? Surgery under the influence?
It's,
I mean, that's got to be just as bad as drunk driving.
It's criminal negligence or recklessness. Yes, it is, because it's somebody's got access to your body.
Oh, sure, and they're performing a surgery under the influence? My gosh, that should be criminal.
At least with a car, Nick, you've got a 2,000-pound piece of metal in between you and the other guy, whereas with an impaired physician, you have nothing. You're just bare wide open to whatever.
Oh, yeah, and you're unconscious.
Right.
Have you ever encountered a situation where you felt the hospital, a doctor, or wherever it may be, did not provide you with all the information? They conspicuously left something out that might have been damning?
Yeah, and that happens quite a bit.
Or they just leave it out, and maybe their thing is, oh, well, we didn't have that, or we've lost it, or...
No, they don't just leave it out. They just don't give it. Okay?
So then you're looking through, and with your experience, you're able to say, all right, clearly, point A to point B, no, we went right to C. There's something missing here.
It's a game, Nick. It's part of the game. It's part of the experience that I have that other lawyers don't. I know how this game is played, and so I know what to look for. Other lawyers who don't do this regularly, they might not know that something's missing, or they might not know how to ask for it. And I know you just have to go through a series of obstacles to get what you are legally allowed to get, and then once you get that information, you can make an informed judgment, whereas some lawyers will just kind of quit and say, well, I guess it's not there, and turn it away.
That's exactly the value of experience. Right. I could say the same thing for a reporter when you're interviewing someone, perhaps someone who's charged with a crime, or a lawmaker, or a politician. Knowing what to ask, and based on their responses, knowing if there's a good follow-up.
Right.
Are they leaving something out here, and that's experience. That's what counts. Let's go to Brian. Hi, Brian.
Yes. Isn't there a cap on medical malpractice in Tennessee, and wasn't it put in there for a reason? I understand that states that don't have it, like California, they get so many lawsuits that the doctors, what they have to be charged for malpractice insurance, it causes them to pass those costs along to their patient.
All right.
Good question, because that's what a lot of people will bring up, Clint.
All right. First of all, Brian, California has caps, has had caps since 1975. Very draconian caps. California caps your non-economic damages to $250,000.
What?
$250,000 non-economic damages cap in California. It's the most drastic cap across the country, and it's done nothing to hold medical health care costs down. It's been there since 1975. We enacted caps in Tennessee of $750,000 for non-economic damages.
When you say non-economic, you mean?
Pain, suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of a loved one. If you're in a wheelchair, God forbid, you're paraplegic, you can recover your medical expenses to take care of you, but the most that you can recover under our cap is $1 million for all the pain and suffering, all of the consequences of being in a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
Can you get more for economic losses? Like if you had to quit your job, that can be factored in, but that's separate.
You can still get that, and that's separate. The theory was, at the time, if we enact caps, it'll hold down medical costs that doctors pay for medical liability insurance. That was the theory, at least as far as it goes.
Yeah.
It didn't work out that way. It never has worked out that way. The bottom line is the insurance company keep the extra profits, put them in their pocket. It's been that way from the beginning, and all you need to do to have any evidence of that is go look at California, that's had caps now for over 40 years, and then go look at a state like Kentucky that's never had them.
And what would you notice? That there's no difference?
They have plenty of doctors, plenty of hospitals, plenty of health care in both different states. I mean, or compare Tennessee to Kentucky.
Is malpractice insurance more expensive for doctors in Kentucky than in California?
I don't know what they pay in rates, but Kentucky's got no problem bringing doctors up there to practice. They're opening up new hospitals and having new doctors in Kentucky every day. It's just, there's this myth out there that we have to have these caps. The reason these caps are passed are the insurance companies saving money so they don't have to pay so much for a claim that they would have if the cap wasn't in effect. The doctors they're not seeing much, if any, of the savings. Never have.
Never have. You know, I kind of fall in the middle of that. I sort of know where you do. I totally understand how these caps and what you just described, they need to be higher. California is ridiculous. But on the other hand, you know, when you talk about tort reform, every once in a while, I guess this happens very rarely, but it makes the news. You see some absurd, you know, award to someone, and I always go back to the crazy, you know, hot coffee spilling on a customer, which has nothing to do with malpractice.
It's 25 years ago, Nick.
I guess that's the only one I can pull out for you.
There are people watching the show that weren't alive when
the hot coffee one, and that's separate. But okay, so what you're saying is there aren't out of control juries giving absurd awards that required this tort reform. This is the insurance company lobbying lawmakers and buffaloing them to the point where we're going to give you money, but we want to have tort reform so we can keep more money.
To show you how much the propaganda works, you got Brian calling in here thinking there's no caps in California, that there's lawsuits going wild in California, and Brian didn't even know there were caps.
Yeah.
He can go look it up. You look up the Medical Liability Reform Act, Brian, in California, you're going to see there's caps. You've been lied to, Brian, and a lot of people get lied to because they think we got an out-of-control system, and we don't. In fact, we got an overly conservative system, in my opinion. I can't give full justice sometimes for my clients because people just simply think, well, I can't give too much money because it'll look bad. And that's... If we can trust juries in Tennessee to send people to death, why can't we trust juries to set a proper amount for damages?
I know. No, that's right. And that's a fair argument. By the way, doctors in general, if they're not seeing a huge savings, how do they usually come down? You'd think most doctors probably just from their point of view would say, yeah, I'd like to have caps so I can't get sued for as much. But what do most doctors say in your experience? Do some of them say, look, I don't care one way or the other. I do my thing as best as I can. And, you know, caps, you know, if a fellow colleague of mine does something egregious that really suffers someone, they deserve to get paid.
That's exactly what doctors tell me, almost to the T. They understand bad care, and they understand that there's some cases where there has to be damages paid, significant damages paid, and I don't think they get as uptight about the caps like the insurance companies do. With insurance, they're bean counters.
Oh yeah,
it's all about the bottom dollar.
Absolutely understand.
And they're the first ones at the trough anytime there's any kind of savings, and they get the savings on the backs of injured people who deserve the money because one size doesn't fit all, Nick. I mean, one person may be a $750,000 case. There's another person that may be a $7.5 million case because their life's been completely ruined.
It's so good you come on to spell that out. Now, you know, I hope a lot of people are watching from the perspective of that myth that's been perpetuated that doctors are charging you more because they have to pay so much for malpractice insurance because they're getting sued all the time. And that is just a myth.
I want Brian to look up. It's called MICRA, M-I-C-R-A. It's the Medical Liability Reform Act in California, and there's a $250,000 non-economic damages cap in
one of the lowest in the country?
One of the lowest in the country. It's been there over 40 years. And people still think, well, there's just a lot of lawsuits going on in what sounds like California would be the obvious place. It's just the opposite. Devastated lawsuits in California.
Take a break on that note when we come back. More of your calls and more of your conversation right now with Clint Kelly. If you have a question about a possible lawsuit case, a situation you're dealing with, or a loved one, now's your chance. Get that free legal advice right after this. Stay with us.